Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Gnostic Media's UnSpun, episode number 108. We are here live from Maine, and hopefully everything is working. I haven't done the show from my laptop before, but we presume we are live broadcasting right now, so I hope that everything is working. Don't run that because it'll overload the system. 108, we are I'm here getting a live from Maine, and hopefully got rid of that. So anyway, sorry about the confusion there. Wow, what a week. We've got a lot to discuss, a lot of updates. I'm excited to have Holly with me here tonight, live. Hopefully the stream is going okay and everything is working all right. The internet is a bit slow here, so anyway, lots to follow up on tonight. Do you want to start, or do you want to say anything?
So we are broadcasting from my futon right now. So if you've ever watched my show, it's small. I've got about 7,000 subscribers. I've been doing it for about a year and a half, and it's basically the corner of my apartment. And when Jan came to visit this week, he's been here. He came in Wednesday, and we've been working on the Salem project, and we got married, and then we are broadcasting from my futon this week to give you some updates on our Salem book. And we also went down to Salem, Massachusetts this week, took a bunch of photos, and looked at the modern day Psy-Op, which is the Salem Danvers area and the Salem Witch Trials museums.
All right, so let's see. Interestingly, as far as this episode, we're going to need lots of donations for this episode. They have already defunded this episode before it started broadcasting, so they didn't want whatever we said getting any funds, so we appreciate any donations. Also, people had written us asking where they can send gifts and whatnot. You can send it to, I guess the easiest would be, because she's going to be moving to California with me here in the next couple of months, but it would be easiest to probably send things to P.O. Box 3819, Crestline, California, 92325. P.O. Box 3819, Crestline, California, 92325. And you can address that to either one of us or both of us, or however you want to. Let's see. So with Salem, wow, what a complete dog and pony show. And Thomas Siegfried is asking if we're still going to do a show on inversion. Yes, we will. It's just not going to be this week. We weren't planning to do a show today, so you'll have to wait till next week, and we'll have Robert and Mark on for that. And so we do want to discuss some of the things that we discovered at Salem, and we want to basically show what people are going to see when they come into Salem. It's basically, what would you call it, baby?
I first went to Salem Village when I was like, I don't know, between 14, 15. And if you live in New England, or you know anything about witchcraft history or colonial history, early American history, if you're interested in the Pilgrims, anything, like Salem is the place to be. There's lots of old buildings, houses. There actually is one building that's connected to the Salem witch trials. There's a memorial there that was built. There's a wax museum. There's a witch museum. There's a witch dungeon museum. I've described it to Jan before he came to visit as basically like a satanic Disneyland kind of thing, like witchcraft everywhere. And especially if you're here in the month of October, if you go to Salem around that time, it's busy the entire month. It was actually busy when we went. We went on a Saturday, went to a few museums, there's really, I mean, you could spend days and days walking around that area looking at all the tarot shops and Wicca. And, you know, when I was a teenager, like, the impression of, you know, it really being a mecca or, you know, center for Wicca and paganism, modern day paganism is very strong in that area.
And some people are reporting that they're having bandwidth issues. We are trying to do this live from a crappy connection, so we apologize for any delay issues that you may be having there. We've got, as far as we know, everything else shut off that we can possibly. I guess, am I the new Amit Birdie Daddy? That's apparently so. So, I don't think Holly bewitched me, though. No. So what we want to do is get over to some of the images to show what you're going to see at Salem. So let me switch monitors here. All right. So now everyone should be looking at the slides. This is the famous so-called witch house that one will see when they first enter Salem, Massachusetts. Now, what's interesting is when we go into this, what we see here next to this house is this sign, and the sign even calls it the witch house. And, you know, so we can see the sign right there, but so when you go inside the house and, you know, you discover that it's not, sorry, and hold on, let me just recenter these. You go inside this house, here's the back door of it, and it's built in the 1600s. But you're presented with a gift shop and a few things, and you go in. Anyway, I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but you're told that this house wasn't actually a witch's house, but it was one of the judge's houses. And as you start going through all of this stuff through Salem, you start hearing the same inconsistencies in the stories. And this Salem is really a, if you could call it, it's essentially like a Disneyland for the promotion of witchcraft and Wicca, New Age shamanism, and all of this stuff. And this is really where they sell this whole agenda. But you find out that it wasn't one of the witches' houses, that it was actually one of the judges' houses in the trials. But, oh, well, somebody called it a witch house in the 1800s, so therefore we put a sign up front to tell everybody it's a witch's house, when it really wasn't a witch's house, it was one of the judges' houses. But then you find out it's the only house remaining in Salem that was built in the 1600s. There's lots of houses that are built in the 1600s, but this is the last one that was built in the 1600s that was still related to the trials. So that's how they stretch it to be a witch house. And then what they do is when you're in the house, you see all of this stuff that they have going on there, and you find out, you know, they have some stuff on Tabuta there and documents and things that you can read and go through, and you know, a dolly, a pair of shoes and things that apparently were, you know, probably found somewhere in Salem at the time, not probably associated with the house originally at all. And all of this stuff is laid out, and then you get upstairs. I'm just looking for the little section here. I think it's this guy. And I'm going to have to skip ahead here through some more images in a second. But then they bring up corpse medicine. And they tie it to Cromwell, and, you know, these guys are doing corpse medicine. And so, you know, here there's some cool loom here and things. You get to see original loom, and they actually have hemp there that you can see that they would have used, and you know, combing the hemp. But anyway, back to the cool powdered or in liquid distillation human bone was given to patients for many different afflictions. So they're trying in a strange loose way to tie this judge to witchcraft and what they thought. And what you'll see the whole time in Salem is that do this whole constant loose association and constant promotion of anything that's Wicca or witchcraft. They constantly promote the idea that the settlers were stupid. Now, most people, when you read their papers and what they were writing and whatnot, you realize that most of them were more educated in the 1690s than your average people today. And you read the comments on the books and everything, and the reviews online of the books. Excuse me. And people actually think that the people of the era were just completely stupid, bumbling idiots. And, it was just all of this superstition stuff. Of course, you're not told that anything about logos or any of this stuff. But, so skull moss and, they have all of this stuff about, bone medicine that you see that they show you there. And then you're back to the bedrooms and how she had 10 children in this house and everything. And you can see this is a pretty decent house by any standards. For 1600, 400 years ago, these people weren't living poorly, as you can see. But so you come out of this place. Let me just skip through this. Oh, and here, they throw these in with the Adam and Eve, with the caduceae, ergo the serpent with Adam and Eve and the fruit of the tree of knowledge there. And then they actually show 2 of these plates in the house, interestingly. But what you're going to see when you walk out through the gift shop and inside the house, a little bookshop, and they're all going to pretty much, and Sub Rosa, of course, is a cult, has a cult meaning to it and whatnot. And then you're fed these same ideas over and over. And let me just switch it back here for a minute. So, you want to go ahead, babe?
Yeah, so I want to talk about the witch house for a second, and I've got a couple of viewers, so hi, BB, thanks for checking out our interview, and hey, Chris, and Chris mentioned something about the satanic temple. We did not find that. We didn't have enough time. Like, we drove down there. It takes a couple of hours to get from my place in Portland down to Salem, and by the time we were walking around, we did not see the church, the satanic temple. He says that we should look up Lucian Greaves, who was the temple's founder.
And we had wanted to, and it was on our agenda. We just, had too much planned for the day.
Right.
So.
And Chris says that he has a psych degree from Harvard. So thanks for the tie-in to all that. We'll be looking into that.
And thanks, Anthony, for the donation just now, by the way. And we really appreciate all the help.
So the witch house, it appears, was started up as a museum. The house, people were asking when it was built. It said about around 1630 it started to be assembled. And yes, by the 1600 standards, that was a mansion, like to have those big giant fireplaces.
Well, that's what they claim. That's the official storyline.
Right.
Anyway.
The fireplace in every room is pretty impressive. So, and that would have been a magistrate's house. And as far as we know, no one was actually brought into that house or questioned or anything like that. But there was a whole section upstairs, as Jan described, specifically about corpse medicine, and he showed one of the photos that tied it in with Oliver Cromwell, which we have talked about was a big Puritan proponent, really pushing Puritanism in England. And then the corpse medicine, as it was promoted by the Puritans, was brought over into the United States. And yes, it had to do with cannibalism. A lot of the times had to do with people who were hung or executed, how the body parts would be divvied up for medicinal purposes. And yet, these are the people promoting this type of medicine, and yet they're the people who are murdering people for witchcraft.
Now, Lee says that people were into spiritism and magic back then, and what we've been discovering more and more of is that, some people may have been into that. There were obviously, the Puritans were essentially Kabbalistic Jews, and they weren't Christians, and the more we've looked into this, the more it's just obvious that they weren't Christians, that at the time Judaism had been outlawed in most parts of the world for human sacrifice and usury and sophistry and manipulation and things like that. So they had gone underground and basically created Protestantism and the fracture in the Christian church so that they could use these religions to hide behind. And we discussed a lot of that in the earlier shows. But, one thing that's really interesting about Salem that you don't hear in many of the stories, and we'll be showing more of the photos as we go through, but you don't hear that Salem was the richest city in the United States, or in the colonies at the time. It was the wealthiest city up until this whole Salem witchcraft thing was launched. And we also see in right downtown Salem, right across from the town square, and interestingly, directly across the street from what was the Salem Armory, which has been pathetically turned into a tourist visitor center. But directly across the street from the Armory was the Dutch East India Company head office, or colony office, or whatever. This building right there. So I'll be showing that here in a minute. But so just everything that you see in this whole presentation in this town is all a dog and pony show. Now, last night, Holly and I watched The Crucible, written by Arthur Miller, and the film is the film, and no doubt the play, which I haven't seen, is an absolute complete joke. There is nothing that she and I saw in it that was factual, and we've got all of these, books here that we're going through and reading as we're studying all of this stuff. So, and when you look at even some of the basic records and then what they're presenting to the public, it's just repeatedly complete nonsense. So when you go into the town, and I'm going to go back to some of these pictures here. So this is part of the official tour of Salem town, and what you see here is a converted church, and then we're told that this church was the jail. And then as you get up closer, it tells you there on the front, it's the Witch Dungeon Museum. Obviously, it's a church building. You can see the church windows there. You can see it used to have a steeple there on the side with the steps leading in, etc., going into the church. Now, they've advertised this whole thing as the original witch's dungeon where these people were held, etc. And then you get up closer and you can see these advertisements. And then you read on the wall, here stood the Salem jail built in 1684, used until 1813, raised in 1957. And then it says, one of these says, where's the one that's, oh, sorry, it's the next one. Sorry. And then it says, this plaque was originally located on Federal Street, the old jail site, 2 blocks north. Right? So it's not the original building. It's not, so it's just a little plaque there. So you get there, but it's this church building. And let me just go back. But it's this church building that the whole time, what you're seeing is this attack on Christianity throughout the town. The whole town is set up as a stage to attack Christianity and to promote New Age Wicca, to promote Satanism and the Church of Satan and homosexuality and all of this stuff. So the whole town is set up this way, or at least as far as the tourist sections go, where they lead people through with the red, painted line and everything. If you're, foolish enough to believe this dog and pony show that they provide. And then in the window, they have this ridiculous little thing here where it's like, people being hung in the, there's somebody being hung there, and it's like this phony little dolls and stuff, somehow designed to look like the original, but in a church wall. And then, let's see, just some more of the stuff around Salem. And then as you're walking around Salem town, you go by the stores, all of the stores in the downtown area that we noticed, except unless maybe it's a jewelry store or something, they're all promoting satanic knickknacks, comic books, wrong, stupid, hold on a second, sorry folks. And they're all just promoting this dumb junk that's all, sorry, I clicked on a wrong window there. And I see this throughout the town, all of it, everywhere. Hex, the old world witchery. And you go a little further and you go in the bookstore and they're selling Aleister Crowley books and magic books. So you get all of your CIA, MI6, bullshit Satanist books that they promote the left-hand path with, and the whole thing is designed to get you caught up and interested into the occult, into this left-hand path stuff, and to believe their attacks on Christianity. Here's a shot downtown. This is, it's just your typical, downtown 16 to 1800s, East Coast city, really. And it's a pretty big, bustling city. I mean, it's Salem's still a pretty busy, there's us. And here's, you get your New Age Buddha shops, you get your magic is happening signs, and a witch up there on the sign of the building, and my finger in the way, so here, just some other stuff. That's the old city hall or town hall there at the end of the stretch there. And that's just a sign that says Namakeg on it, which was the original name of Salem. And, wicked good books. So again, the theme, and then you go, it's just always the same thing that they're selling. Another thing that we noticed is constant promotion of women and feminism in this, and that they want people to believe that only the women were the victims of the whole thing. But interestingly, we saw almost only the same books as we went store to store and were checking all of this stuff. So you want to talk for a few minutes there?
Yeah, so there are a lot of bookstores in Salem, whether it's like New Age bookstores or just regular bookstores, but we noticed they have like the, local interest. That was the section that says local interest, and it'll have a list of the official Salem books of the year. I've got one of them here. Just like books like this, like A Storm of Witchcraft, or The Delusion of Salem, or Six Women of Salem. And like Jan said, a lot of this is like some sort of like feminism promotion, but once you actually look at the number of people who were arrested, the number of people who are hung and crushed to death, etc., is pretty evenly men and women. But it seems interesting, like when we took I took Jan to the I think it was called the Salem Witch Museum, which was built in the 1972. It's a wax museum. They used like this idea of like, oh, well, women were really oppressed in Puritan society, which, is neither here nor there for this story, because they're saying that these women, girls, just...
Thanks, Lex Van.
Yeah, totally went delusional, and that's still to this day is their official narrative, that they're just saying these young girls just went delusional.
Right, and we'll show I think I have a photo of the names of the people who were put to death, and you can see it's probably about maybe 60-40 or 55, 45 men and women. It's pretty close to even, but let's see. Somebody was asking some questions here. What was it? And thanks for the donation there. Anyway, Namakeg was the original name of Salem, and that changed way back in the early 1600s. So let's see here. So we go through all of these books. You know what? Let me go back to some of these, some of the images here. But we can see a delusion of Satan, and this is a regular theme too. What they want you to believe is that Satan creeped in. Never mind that the whole whole production of Salem is a promotion of Satanism and witchcraft and the left-hand path. The whole production is this. But what they do is they all spin it. It's all inversion. Somebody wanted to know if we were going to discuss inversion tonight. It's all inversion. So they want you to believe that the people of Salem were deluded. They don't want you to know that it was a project being put on by the Royal Society and Harvard College at the time, and that this was all set up as a Psy-Op and intentional social engineering, etc. They want you to believe that the poor, stupid Puritans of the time, they were just too dumb, and, those Christian beliefs just got the best of them, even though they were Jews. And another thing that we discovered is this constant use of Christian Hebraism and, manufactured terms, etc. Christian Hebraism. You're either Old Testament or you're New Testament. You can't be a Christian Hebrew, Christian Hebraism. So it's like, what we actually see, what the truth of the matter is it's Judaic Christianism, where it's Jews pretending to be Christians and attacking Christianity and casting this lie and pretending that it was Christians deluded by all of this stuff when it actually has nothing to do with Christianity. We can see a book about Danvers State Hospital there. But, throughout the stores, we see the same books on Wicca and witchcraft, and, you get your psychic this and that, and there you can see up on the top shelf there a Deepak Chopra book. Get all your latest gobbledygook. And if that wasn't enough, right there in the center, we can see a nice book promoting the Communist Manifesto, if that's not Satanist enough for you, since Karl was in fact a Satanist. And, so we can see the second sex and all of this stuff. Just the same promotion of the New Age, Satanism, all the SRI, Esalen Institute, Tavistock Institute, Royal Society, Fabian Society crap that we've been, exposing for the last several years. So here is one of the books here that we were talking about. Here, let me go to the next one. The Rise and Murderous Fall of Salem, America's Richest City. So that is something that it's very rare to see this in the official storyline. And we were surprised to see that, so I'm interested in actually getting a hold of that book. In fact, if anybody wants to donate a couple of $100 for all the books that Holly and I need to buy, that would be extremely appreciated, because just the books that we wanted to get in just this set was about $150, 100 plus, if we get the oldest, most worn copies that we could get. Mayflower Papers, etc., all of these different books. But the stores, you go store to store, they're pretty much promoting the same thing. And then you can see the Magic Parlor up there, and the Witch History Museum, which was unfortunately closed when we got there, and so we couldn't check that out. But it's just the same theme over and over. What's that one?
The Flying Monkey.
Flying Monkey. So you go store to store, place to place. It's probably the biggest promotion of Satanism and New Age horse shit that you can find anywhere in the world. If you want to, get stuck on the left-hand path, this is the place for you to go for you to being a lying douchebag. But so you can see, it's just over and over and over. Store after store, seances, tarot decks, candles, incense, and herbs, palmistry, mediumship, etc. Geez, I can't even get the button there. How does my finger keep getting in the way there? Sorry about that. Bewitched in Salem. And of course, right across from this diagonally was the Bewitched statue. Holly did ask if I wanted a photo, and if we wanted to get a photo in front of it. I didn't. I thought, my comment was, no, that's effing stupid, and then so now everybody thinks we should have probably done it. But
So there's some interesting facets to the modern take on Salem as a tourist town. So I started to look into the history of when Salem started to really embrace itself as a tourist industry, and it started to go back to the 1800s, right after there was a publication of Nathaniel Hawthorne. His family house is there. His paternal grandfather was involved with the Salem trials as a magistrate. So Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote about Marymount, which we had talked about, the Puritan pagan settlement. And so his house is right down the street from downtown Salem. And with him and that era of like dark romanticism, the idea of paganism, transcendentalism in New England was also very popular in the early 1800s. And in Salem, they started to make something called witch spoons. And they're like those collector spoons that you get when you travel.
Caduceus wrapped around the...
Or it says Salem, or it says a witch. And so this has like a photo of a witch on it. And this goes back to the early 1800s. And that's when the witch house was originally bought up by the town. It was turned into a museum officially in the 1940s. And then by the 1950s, Arthur Miller came into Salem. He wrote The Crucible, basing it off of the modern McCarthyism witch hunt era. So he put that together in 1954 when The Crucible came out. And then the TV show Bewitched came out in the 1960s and 70s. And by then, Salem had really embraced its pagan, New Age roots. And the Wax Museum was created. There's actually a whole other section about modern Wicca, modern paganism in the Witchcraft Museum. So you might think you're going into the Salem Museum thinking you're going to learn about Puritans, but the whole second half of the tour is about modern paganism and modern Wicca. So it's one of the largest concentrations of tarot card readers, psychics, New Age books, all that sort of stuff. And that we just went on a Saturday in March and it was busy, never mind October.
And the whole thing is designed to attack especially Christians, but young people, and then especially young girls, into getting caught up in feminism, into getting caught up into Wicca. And if people get caught up in this belief that's been falsely spread, in my opinion, about Christianity being about deity worship rather than logos or truth, then they fall prey to this easy nonsense, which this town is set up to embrace. So, you go through this town and it's just over and over and over and over and over. Everywhere you go, you're bombarded with this complete nonsense. It's like, by the time we left there, we felt like we had just been completely insulted by the city of Salem town. I mean, we apologize to people for the cutting out and whatnot. We're doing the best we can with the connection that we have. So, anyway, we'll just have to, hopefully maybe the final version after we're finished it will be a little bit cleaner if you rewatch it. We don't know, but so yes, we are in Maine right now. We are no longer in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is a commonwealth, which by definition means communist. So this is why Harvard and all of these communist things come out of Massachusetts. And anyway. So let's get back to some more of these images that we have here. There's more to go through. And let's see here. So, okay, let me figure out how to work the mouse between these monitors. All right, okay, and just more of the same, more of the same. You can, there is the East India Marine Hall right there. So, from the old East India Company, still standing. And, this was, again, the richest city in America in the 1600s. So...
We were trying to watch the Crucible movie last night. I think it's from 1994. And, they show all
with Winona Ryder, who... Sorry.
Okay.
So Winona Ryder, of course, is Timothy Leary's goddaughter, and of course Leary and Crowley and all of this nonsense. Leary based most of his horseshit at Harvard off of Cotton Mather, etc. So, the irony that Winona Ryder, his goddaughter, is playing in this utterly ridiculous crap movie, The Crucible on Salem, is just, fitting for the whole thing. Go ahead, sorry.
So with the film, like you said, Winona Ryder, Daniel Day-Lewis film, if you haven't seen it, 1994, Arthur Miller's play about, the modern day, it's like an interpretation of modern day witchcraft, the witch hunt, McCarthyist witch hunt through the eyes of Salem. And what Jan was just showing, the East India Trading Company was based in Salem. Salem was a big bustling city even before Boston was. Boston got built up later, but in the mid-1600s, Salem was huge. It was a very rich seaport, and East India Trading Company right there in the center. And in the film, The Crucible, it looks like they're in Cape Cod or something. They're, in the middle of nowhere,
Mud huts.
Yeah, mud huts and, dirt roads, no cobblestone. They look like they're in Maine or something like that. They made it look so quaint, where in reality, like Jan said, these people were very advanced. People were speaking and reading, the men, multiple languages, looking at Mather's books and what people are writing about. These people were very well educated and very rich in this area.
Completely the opposite of the official storyline that we're constantly fed about all of this stuff. We have so much information to write a very long book. It's getting ridiculous. We've also identified some of the academic cells that are involved in the cover-up. So it's going to be, fun to tackle and expose more of the, the intelligence networks cells that are involved in all of this. One woman's name, Marilyn Roach, fittingly, and some of the others. A professor there in Salem that's involved in promoting the official lie, and so there's a lot of good material. But just going through this whole downtown area, witch pics, and you can have a photograph taken where you look like a ridiculous witch of some sort or whatnot and whatever. But anyway, downtown Salem. It is sharing, yes. Okay. So that's the old armory, and of course it's been vacated. No longer a valuable armory that would actually be useful. It's been turned into a worthless tourist center in order to promote more of the what?
We're not sharing those photos.
Oh, we're not?
You can talk about
them. Sorry. Here, let me go back then. Derp. Okay. Let's just go to that one. Thank you for checking. Fixed. All right, there we go. So this is the downtown area. That is the Salem Armory here. And then, again, once a very valuable building for any community has been turned into a worthless visitor center to promote paganism and witchcraft and Satanism. But I guess, the only valid thing that they had to offer there was we were able to use the restrooms. You go in and you're, given some of the typical stuff, a few images of old whatnots and such. And then, again, the same books, as we've already seen over and over. You're going to have the Roach books, the Six Women, the Storm of Witchcraft, Death in Salem. You're going to see these same books over and over, the disinfo books that are, in our opinion, inversion, selling the official story, always the attack on Christianity and the promotion of Wicca and Satanism, and the inversion that this was all done by Christians when the Puritans were in fact not Christian. So just more of this stuff, more of the books. You can see their opium use and whatnot. Why they selected opium of all things, maybe to promote the idea that they were delusional and high on heroin or something like that. But
they called it laudanum.
Yeah, laudanum is one of the
Laudanum.
forms of opiates. So always the same stuff throughout. Devil in the shape of a woman. Again, we're that half of the people put to death were men is ignored, and we're only told that they were women. Again, it's nonsense. This is just part of the official sign, part of the promotion of feminism that all of them, pump in this whole thing. And I had the brain database up. We do have in the brain database all of these authors, etc., mapped, and we're trying to pin down the cells more accurately in the coming weeks and months so that we can show exactly how each of these authors are spinning the information, etc. Ooh, National Geographic on that one. There you go. And anyway, it's basically just Disneyland for witchcraft. There's valuable historical information there, but there's so much horseshit piled on top of the information that you really have to dig through it. You have to use the trivium. You have to, have your wits about you when you're trying to go through all this stuff. Sorry, I got too many.
It was kind of funny. We were in the witch museum, like the witch house, and like looking around, like
too many.
We were listening. Jan and I were like listening to the tour guides, and like Jan got all snarky with one of the women, being like, "So you call this the witch house, but there was never any witches in this house. It was not a witch house. It was owned by a judge, like..."
Right, and she got pretty... so she was lying to the tourists, this British woman in the house that we showed at the very start of the show. She was actually lying to the tourists, she's telling them how the witches were put to death, and I corrected her, and I said, "Excuse me, is it not true that only people who denied being witches were put to death, and that all of the people who admitted being witches were let go?" And then she's had to admit in front of the group of people there that I was in fact correct, and then she had a very perturbed look on her face. But you could tell all the women who are running these tours in these houses and promoting this whole lie, they're all into this Wicca horse shit created by Mircea Eliade, and Sir James George Fraser is really the core of this. James George Fraser was a member of the Royal Society when they created a lot of this mythos, and when you understand that logos is truth and then the antithesis is a lie, it's pretty simple to figure out most of the stuff compared with the nonsense that they sell officially with it. So did you have something you wanted to add to that?
No, I just thought it was funny. I mean, when we were there in March, a lot of the buildings in the museums don't open up until April or May, so we were only able to see a couple, and I think that was enough for both of us for the day anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you can only have your intelligence insulted so much. And sorry to all of you people who have gone to Salem Town and bought into the dog and pony show or whatnot, but it is a dog and pony show. It is just Disneyland for Satanism and witchcraft. I mean, seriously, you have to look at it for what it is. And when you get the gag, it's just a city that has decided to take it upon itself to make it part of the city's motto to promote this, entire thing of bullshit. So let's go back to, let's try to share the other monitor again. More of the books. Old Namakeg, there's the name of the city there, so you can actually, probably more value. That would probably be more valuable than some of the witchcraft nonsense that you get. This was actually a really interesting book. You could actually study the language of the natives who lived in New England at the time, and it was actually a word for word, like, what do they call it? Language guide or whatever that you would have if you went on a tour of France today or something like that. You got your Native American guide when you went on a tour of New England back then. And then, anyway, enough of that. Journal of Pilgrims at the Plymouth. So, this is just looking at the other side of the armory from the other direction. And here's more downtown, another old 1600s house that's part of the official tour that they put on and whatnot. So John Wardhouse, there you go. So now here we go. Now this is probably, if you really want to get into the BS that is Salem Town, it's really centered around this. And you know, I should have the. Sorry, I'm going to try to launch that. See if I can get that up. But you really need to look at this. And do you remember the guy's name who launched? I'm trying to bring up the database right now, but it's going to take a minute to launch here. But anyway, the guy that started the museum or funded it back in the 1970s, he's really been the one. He was the guy who got behind, who you know, went to the city hall or the Chamber of Commerce and whatever, and got them to start promoting all of this stuff as official Salem history and whatnot. So that, you know, they got the whole community involved in this whole lie and production. But as you can see, the Satanists have put the so-called museum in a church. Now, I'm pulling up a citation here. What was the guy's name? He was Biff McCowd. So Biff McCowd is the rich guy who funded all of this stuff, and then Stacy, what's her name? There was a few others there. Let me just pull up the database here. Just bring it over so everybody can see it. Let's see. Stacy Tilney is their PR person or whatever, promotions person, and all these people involved or whatever, but so, as we can see, they put it in a church to add to the effect of it, and the church had been relinquished because it was two divided churches, and then the church reunited, and they didn't need the second church anymore, so they just sold it off, and it was an auto museum for a while, and then they put the so-called witch museum in it, and it's across the street from, what's the guy's name who founded Namakeg? Roger Conant.
Roger Conant.
Yeah, so that's the statue of Roger Conant there. There we are.
He was a pilgrim, not a Puritan.
He was a pilgrim, and of course the Puritans, darn it, the Puritans came in and ran the pilgrims out early on, and that's across the street. That's the town square you can see there. And there's looking from the statue to the Witch Museum. So they, where was I going with that?
So the Salem Witch Museum was founded in 1972. The church, I think, had been empty for a little while.
Yeah, I just said that.
And so in 1972, it was founded with the Wax Museum. It was based off of lots of interest from the Bewitched television show. Actually did some filming across the street at the Hawthorne Hotel, and so it was a wax museum. And if you watch the History Channel or anything like that, every year they roll out images of the Salem Witch Museum, and we took photos inside of the Salem Witch Museum. You have to wait in line for a little while, and they have all these plaques on the wall.
Yeah, we'll show those in just a second too.
Yeah, so they give the official story right there for everyone to witness, and so someone in the chat just sent $10 and said that the feed is really breaking up, so just want people to know that that's my internet connection. And that's why I complain about my videos taking forever to upload.
Yeah, so we got a flashing red thing
So
here.
I have really bad internet connection. I apologize. I do what I can with the equipment that I have, and doing a live stream with Jan wasn't necessarily the first thing I had planned. So
and I didn't know your feed couldn't handle, your internet couldn't handle live. So we apologize. So.
It works for me, but it's not working now, so sorry, guys.
Yeah, so anyway, let's go back to some of these images. So now, getting back up here, you get inside this place. Oh, here we go. We see the gay pride, ride with pride thing inside the Salem Witch Museum. I drive a stick, etc. So all we see is this whole promotion of Wicca, witchcraft, knick-knack nonsense. And then, we go back to the exact same books. And over and over and over, the same books are put in front of you. Here's one, maybe a couple that we found that were different. But almost all of the books in each of the places were identical. You can say this, you see the Salem witch trials there. But, and then they promote, knickknacks, your typical Satanism, witchcraft, Wicca, Crowley, whatever attack on Christianity and family stuff that they can promote. And let's see, skipping through some of this stuff. This is just more of the same. You get tired of seeing. Okay, so this is going in when you start going into the tour. They shuffle you into this little room, and then you read these plaques on the wall where they tell you the official stories of things and where the house is, where the swimming witch. And anyway, this is basically what you're shown at. Of course, they show the official nonsense about ergot. Of course, what they don't tell you is that ergot was easily identified in the 1600s. People knew what it was, and it was not ergot. It was a Psy-Op by Harvard and the Royal Society that included, we've seen evidence of inoculations, possibly ergot, possibly datura, stramonium, and other stuff at play. So many things there, but all of this stuff was combined into a huge PR thing, typical of Harvard. Of the Harvard Psychology and Social Relations Department today. Timothy Leary working there in the, when was it, the 50s, 60s, I forget. And then, of course, Jordan, what's his name?
Jordan Peterson?
Is that Jordan? No. Who's the guy that's all over promoting all of the... Isn't that Jordan Peterson? Yeah, Jordan Peterson took over Leary's position at Harvard after that. So anyway, it's all of this stuff, the same, you're fed the same nonsense. So here's the wall of the names, and the people that were hanged is this column here. I don't know if you folks can see that, but it's this column here, and it's about 50-50 that were put to death, male and female, but of course they want you to believe that it was all women that were accused and all of this nonsense, but there's just a better shot of it. But, for those who were accused and not put to death, it's probably more women there than men, but those put to death is pretty well broken up 50-50. And just here's some of the accused here. Thomas, Giles, Deverance, Joseph, there's there's quite a few men in these two, William and Edward, etc. So they want you to believe, here's Philip, Thomas, Edward, Captain John, Nicholas. They want you to believe that all of these are women. John Howard, etc. John Jackson's son, father. Stephen Johnson, again, they want you to believe that all of these were women. And then you when you go inside this thing, I mean, you're actually shown this sigil in the middle of the floor, that's a satanic sigil, and it's all of the names of the victims that they want you to believe were witches, which they actually weren't witches. They were the ones who denied it. And then you're shown this, ridiculous thing of Satan, and then it's not even really a museum. It's more of like this 1970s wax museum production. They play you a recording that was recorded in the 1970s, and then, after the first 10 or 20 minutes of it, you feel so insulted you don't want to go to the next part, which is like where they promote Wicca and New Age BS. You want to take over for a minute?
Yeah, so just anecdotally, if you go to Salem, doesn't really matter what time of the year, you see like the main interest or the main demographic that it seems to be targeted towards is young women. And so like teenagers, teenage girls, and young women. And like this idea inside the Salem Wax Museum, they were promoting this story where they were like, oh, you know, these girls, these Puritan girls.
The boys got to go to school and learn, but the girls slaved away all day at home.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
didn't get to play or go outside.
So therefore, they went completely nuts and started to accuse people in town, and all these people were hung. So it seems to promote this idea of trying to lure in young women into like Wicca and paganism. Interesting, you know, just anecdotally, just walking around, seeing like it's a lot of young women that are interested in this whole story and the whole scene around there. And you know, they do like a pagan pride parade and stuff like that, and just kind of strange that they're saying that, you know, the delusion of Satan and whatnot in Salem, but yet they're also straight up showing, as you saw the photograph, you know, they had a wax Satan that they kept referencing. So it's kind of in your face, like putting out the sigils and stuff like that. And
there's a huge sigil right behind Satan in the so-called museum as well, which is really it's really not a museum in our opinion. Now, just to caveat this whole thing for the lawyers and all who might be getting upset about this, all of this is just our opinion. There you go. So, you know, in our opinion, they have a big sigil right behind the thing. It's just, the whole thing is designed to promote witchcraft and Satanism in the left-hand path, and to create false attacks on Christianity and pretend it was Christians who did all of this nonsense rather than the Jewish Puritans or, you know, Jewish Christianism that was behind it. And then spin everything and use it as a 326-year-old attack on Christianity.
So I saw some people in the chat saying, like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would they be doing this? Well, we have to look at this idea of the context of the Puritans connected in with, you look into the connection to Oliver Cromwell, and we followed the founders of the Royal Society tied in with Cromwell, and then guess who tied in with the Royal Society members? Well, John Dee. So it's like this long thread of promotion of Kabbalah in England.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
Platonic Forms just jumped in and he said, all of Christianity is a Jewish cult. That's complete nonsense. If anybody who's ever read the Bible for 2 seconds knows that Jesus goes around converting all of the Jews from Judaism to Christianity, number one. Number two, logos means truth. Christianity is about logos, where truth is God. Judaism is the antithesis of that. So you could possibly be more diluted in your opinion there. I hope you do get your head straight and maybe learn things, study them before you speak next time.
I think the larger point that we see from the Salem witch trials is that they were able to use this idea of spectral evidence and use it in court. It was promoted exclusively throughout the trials as the means of hanging a lot of the people, crushing, etc. People died in prison. But the end result was a promotion of the Enlightenment era, the new scientism that was coming in, the separation of church and state. And we, in our second video, we talked about the connection between Benjamin Franklin and his brother, who were critical of the use of spectral evidence, and they were promoting this idea of Enlightenment science, and this connects directly into the founding of the United States. So the end result from the Salem witch trials and from Puritanism is that we have the separation of the church and state and the promotion of Enlightenment science out of it.
Now we have a couple more comments here where people that haven't studied things are spreading disinfo. BB Hammer says Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism.
Well,
let's interrupt. Hold on a second. I've exposed this, I think, in my shows with Jacob Duelman as well as with Robert Rowe recently, and I hope you go and check those. Judaism, as it sounds, comes out. It's technically far more likely that it's Judaism, which came out of Christianity. Logos comes before the antithesis, truth before thesis before antithesis, truth before the lie. Christianity worships God as truth, where Judaism worships Satanism, or the left-hand path. So you can't say that Christianity came out of Judaism. That's falling for the inversion and the lie. Again, I hope you go back and look at some of the earlier shows and stop, spreading that kind of disinformation. Christianity comes from Platonism. Again, that's assuming that logos wasn't first and not comprehending things that you haven't read yet. And I see more comments about that, people repeating the same things. But I do hope that people go back and look at our shows where we talk about Tartary, the collapse of Tartary, how the Khazars were a part of that, and breaking up the 12 tribes and everything, because we really have exposed this already in just recent weeks. So the fact that people still are caught in this mindset and not getting it, it's just really sad. I see Action Bell there caught in the same nonsense as well. But when you get that logos is truth and whatnot. See, this is what we have is a bunch of trolls taking over here, like Platonic forms. Yeah, so let's just block these people. And then, anyway.
Don't block the people on my channel, though.
I can't block anyone on your channel.
Well, I have some of my friends on there, so
like
don't
who?
block them.
Well, I'm blocking trolls, people that are just being antagonistic, who haven't even read it and don't know what logos is, and we've already explained all of this about Tartary and everything, so it just gets kind of old when people,
So, I want to get back to Salem. I think the point when we start to look into with this episode, so this is the third video that we've done on Salem together. So this is us drawing our research from the history of the Salem witch trials to the modern day and the modern day propaganda, what has really come out of this whole idea. So we see these academic cells constantly retelling the story of Salem for their own promotion. So whether it was initially to promote Enlightenment science and to the promotion of separation of church and state with the founding fathers and early 1700s, or with transcendentalism and dark romanticism, Nathaniel Hawthorne, and the idea of Marymount, so creating this idea of promoting paganism. And then we start to see in the early 20th century, we see Salem town taking on this tourism industry. And then up through into the 1960s, 1972, we see the modern Wicca movement being launched. We see Salem adopting that once again. And then we see every few years there's a new academic cell which promotes like the same, 5 to 10 books retelling the story. Sometimes they'll throw in, what about this idea of ergotism, or what about hysteria? And that's where my work and the research I've done over the years.
The feed is stopped. There it goes. Okay. Sorry.
Talking about Salem, the research that I've done since I was a teenager. That's how I was able to connect it to Jan's work as Spies in Academic Clothing, as these academic cells which constantly retell the story of Salem to promote it, whether or not it's being used, anti-Christian or communism or modern day witch hysteria.
Right. People, the audience, and then we're going to wrap it up. You really have to, stop and think for a moment. Keyword there. Why is this town? Why are they promoting all of this stuff? Why the constant attack on family, Christianity, trying to spin Christianity that it came out of Judaism, not the other way around, that it's based on deity worship rather than logos or truth, which, the deity stuff is, in my opinion, false. I think it's about truth and logos, which is self-evident to anybody who's read the book themselves. Most of the people who make such nonsense comments are, usually haven't read it and they follow the lies, they can't go back to, for instance, the shows that Robert and I have done in just recent weeks about this stuff.
Okay.
What?
Well, that's good. I think we should wrap this up.
What happened?
Okay.
What? All right, so...
You're blocking my friends on there.
Oh, I didn't... I put somebody on timeout a minute ago. I don't know who it was. It was whoever was going on there. So, anyway, we are wrapping it up. We're past time, and it's time for dinner. Hope everyone enjoyed the show tonight, and that's a wrap. Do you want to say anything?
Just subscribe to my channel if you haven't, because I know Jan has a lot of subscribers, so check out my channel. That'll also be in the links. And yes, we're writing a book. We have a list, all the photos that we took of all the books. We want to try to get all those books so we can create a larger picture about what's going on with these academic cells and Salem, and how this idea of Salem is being promoted to this day. And I know someone else sent me some information about the Christian Science. They called it the second Salem witch trials in the 1890s, about Christian Science. So that's something I'm going to be looking up as well. So thanks for the tips on that. And thanks if you want to help us get some more books so we can write our book.
And that's a good one right there. New Israel, New England, Jews and Puritans in Early America. Good spin book published by University of Massachusetts Press. But anyway, we will see you next week. Hopefully we'll have